Hello there. Welcome to our podcast, Africa to the World, where we tell African stories to transform lives and unify us as African people. I am Yvonne.
And I'm Shamisa.
And we are your hosts. So today we have an interesting topic that we would like to talk to you about. Our title for our topic today is Hunhu, Christianity, Black Tax and Inheritance, Conversations with Millennials. So we all know that Black tax is a thing. It's a conversation that we've been having for over years and years in time. And it is a concept that has originally originated from South Africa. So we are happy to have in the studio today a fellow patriotic South African national who's going to talk to us today about Black tax and how we all have been cringing at the word Black tax. I believe most of us do not want to hear that word, and some of us accept that word, and some of us are sitting in the fence or in between. So I'd like to introduce our guest today. His name is Neto Chemane. And he is a sports broadcaster, creative producer, presenter, voiceover artist, motivational speaker, and proudly African with African excellence close to his heart. So we have Neto in the house. And Neto, can you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your understanding of Black tax?
All right. Thank you so much, ladies, and thanks for the invite to an awesome podcast that's talking to Africans about real issues. It's good to see such happening on such platforms because, African people are dealing with day-to-day trauma. So with regards to Black tax, Black tax is quite a subject. But just for those who do not know me, my name is Neto Chemane. My father is from Mozambique, just to give you a background. And my mother is South African. So I was born in South Africa, but I've also been to Mozambique as a young boy, and I stayed some few years that side and then came back to South Africa. I studied to this side from primary, secondary, until tertiary. So coming back to the subject, Black tax. Black tax is quite a headache, and it's a headache in such a way that it brings so much trouble on the table, and I'll tell you why. Perhaps let's try and break down what it is. So Black tax is a scenario where here's Neto. He just finished his studies. That's if he even got an opportunity to study, because with other people, they go through real challenges where there's not even money to further your studies or even complete your studies, which would therefore force you to drop out, and you drop out because of, you can see the situation at home that it's not allowing for you to further your studies, not because you wouldn't want to do so. And then you end up being forced to go and look for a job. And as soon as you've got employment and you've got your first salary, there comes this monster called Black tax, where now the parents know that Neto has started a new job. It doesn't matter how much you're getting paid, but you must still drop something on the table, whether you buy groceries or you assist your siblings with school stuff, because the struggle is real like that. So it differs from one individual to another who goes through all these challenges. But personally, with me, it was a scenario where, I started working when I was 22 years, and I was working and I was studying. I was studying sports management. I started at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology when it was still called Cape Tech. And then I moved to Johannesburg, back to Johannesburg, where I'm from. And then I then went to University of Johannesburg, UJ, when it was still TWR, Technical and Witwatersrand. And then I continued there with my course. But while I'm studying, I had to go look for a job, and I started working at Sportsman's Warehouse, which is like they deal with, it's a sports retail basically. So all your sporting equipment, different sporting codes, camping stuff, gym stuff, you find them there. So I was working there, and my first salary was like 1.8. But remember, 1.8, you must travel, you must eat lunch every day, you must eat breakfast, because I used to start work at 8 a.m. and finish off at 6:30. You get 15 minutes, 2 tea breaks, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and then an hour lunch. And then that's it. And you still work on weekends. So one weekend in, one weekend out. Now come month end, when you get back home, the parents are waiting for you to see what is it that you are putting on the table. You must contribute towards rent. With me, it was worse because I was staying in a zozo at the backyard, which is well known as Mkuku in South Africa. So I was staying in that shack and I had to pay rent. I was paying 250 rent, I meant to say, and I was contributing to the groceries. And obviously, every now and then there's no bread, you must still make a plan. So basically, from 1.8, I mean, what is 1.8? Yes, it's not now. It was, I mean, more than a decade ago. But the fact of the matter is that you still feel this pain to an extent that other people, they end up dropping out of work as well because they feel like I'm working for transport and I'm working for black tax. And really, what can you do in a scenario like that? Because every now and then you get reminded that I took you to school, even when your father was not here. I did 1, 2, 3. Now you are under pressure. You've got to do something because otherwise there wouldn't be peace in the house. And it goes to an extent that other people, as soon as they get employment and they can afford to rent out an apartment, they move out of home. Now, moving out of home does not really help to the black community because you move out of home, the cheapest rent is about 6,000, 7,000. Even if you share it with someone, you're parting ways with close to 4K, you must still contribute towards water and electricity. You must still buy groceries. You must still travel to work. So there's a lot on the table. If you have kids, even worse, you must support your kids. So that's why the black nation, a larger percentage, you find that someone lives from hand to mouth and the salary does not stay even a week in the bank account. Remember, there's debit orders again that you cannot avoid. So also because of there are no teachings prior to employment situation, now you end up making all the wrong decisions. And now you end up struggling to even buy a house because before you could buy a house, you prioritized buying a car. And now, after buying a car, black tax goes even higher because then the parents will be thinking, no, this one has got money. So it goes on and on and on. But let me stop. Let me stop at this point for now, so that we can allow the conversation to flow.
That is so true. From the way you're describing it, it brings us back to the question: black tax, is it a burden or is it ubuntu? And as we are talking about Hunhu in Shona, what we call in South African local languages ubuntu, it becomes more of a burden and not what actually should have just been something that we as children should do for our parents, and not out of from a place of burden, but out of from a place of love. So Neto, if you can maybe I'd like to tap your brain into this issue about black tax being a thing that started way back in the days before or during apartheid era, because many studies have said that black tax has been something that is more of a system. It's not more of like a culture. It's more of a system. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, good knowledge. It's a scenario whereby it sort of became a system because of our history. Like you've touched on the most disturbing factor, which is apartheid, which has actually delayed a lot of African people's progress in life. So obviously, that's how then black tax would sort of become a system. And I'll tell you why it sort of becomes a system, because you come from a scenario where our elders and their elders, they come from heavy days of apartheid. And then there was now our generation who grew up in the 80s, who have also experienced this same system of apartheid, which was a system that did not allow any tangible progress for black people because of just how things are. It's like let's say our parents would have been employed with the white counterparts of their age group, but you find that the salary difference between the two is massive, and some of their bosses, without even completion of matric, but they would be their bosses regardless of how the black employee has gone out there and studied and made sure that they grind these results so that they can have a better life. So it's a scenario whereby at the end of the day, poverty becomes an ongoing cycle. Hence the Portuguese line, "A luta continua," which means the struggle continues. So now, when the struggle continues, it becomes a generational curse, because then it moves from their generation from their parents' generation to their generation to our generation. That's why lately we even find black tax on another level when we talk about child labor, whereby especially the communities in the rural areas where there's not much of opportunities, and you find that they end up finding ways of, let's go grab morojo in the fields and or plant morojo, so that when it's time to harvest, then we know that we can sell this so that at least our families can be able to afford basic needs. Now, this is a child who hasn't even completed school, but already the situation is forcing them into the direction of getting a job. And when they get a job, already they are into the black tax system, because then the parents know that Yvonne has gone to the farms. It means by the end of the week or by the end of the month, we should be able to get something coming to the family, because then she would have sold. Do you understand? So it's a system that you can't run away from, but it's also an unfair system that comes from the previous systems of governance. And that's why I always say, I mean, I was having a conversation the other day on expressions, and I was saying to them, talking about Africa Month, I was saying to them, what's there to celebrate? Because African people are going through a trauma on a daily basis because of systems that have been placed in our lives that are so very unfair and that are not allowing us to breathe. Hence, other people would end up committing suicide. Other people will end up abusing substances, drugs, alcohol, and so many other substances. So it's all those issues where we can't handle situations the same way. People will always say kuzologa, which means it will be okay. But you keep wondering, when will this day come when people say it will be okay? When will it be okay? Because it doesn't seem like we are winning this battle. So that's what then makes it a system. But also touching on the issue of ubuntu or a burden, it is an issue of ubuntu if there's a structure from the family where we say there's three of us as siblings, and Yvonne is our elder sister, and Shamiso comes next, and Neto is the last born. Now, the one that finishes school first, because of how tough we're having it as a family, will assist the siblings. And then by the time the siblings are sorted, then the siblings will either assist the young ones or plow back to the family, But we don't have those kind of systems because of how undivided we are as families. That's why from time to time you've got siblings fighting, also because of poor governance, this time being the parents.
Yeah. Yeah, the issue of governance. I feel like it's a system that's just passed on generation after generation, and no one's doing anything specific in particular about that. But while we're looking at the consequences of black tax coming or stemming from a place of oppression and lack of access for black and colored people in communities, some people can argue that it is the finest way of discipline, of teaching accountability, selflessness, and leadership amongst us as Africans. What's your thoughts on that?
Look, it's not a one-way traffic scenario. It differs from one situation to another. Because if, let's say, as African families, we are united and we've got a family system that can help us to create affordability, regardless of how expensive items on the shelves could be. But if we have that proper structure where we know, I mean, other families are blessed with a father and a mother, but you also get those families where the father it was a hit and run scenario, and the father is not in the picture, and the poor mother has to deal with 4 boys and 3 girls kind of vibe, and now there's a male figure missing in action that could be assisting the mother to create this proper system. Now, you see, some families are not so advantaged like others, but if you have a proper family, let's just take the issue of death away and say no one died in the family, the parents are there, and they all teach their kids accordingly to say, we've got to be united as a family. Because remember, family is the biggest institution. So if we are not united as a family, then how are we going to be united as a country, let alone as a continent? So it has to start from a family setup where we make sure that there's unity and we can work we can work with each other to make sure that we deal with life challenges together. I mean, there's a family that I know where all of them, they got married, and before they got married, it's five siblings. Before they got married, they all stayed at home. It was a small four-room house, and then the first one started working, and he started helping the family. The second one's similar situation. As soon as they were employed, they were plowing back to their family. They were able to extend their family house. That's their parents' house. And they all stayed there until they all got married and went different directions. Now, the advantages out of a scenario like that is that at least you didn't waste 5,000 rands or 6,000 rands on monthly rent at an apartment you are not even owning, because 20 years down the line, 6,000 by 20 years, it's a lot of money. Now imagine if you had stayed at home and saved that money, so that by the time you are ready to start a family or you are ready to move out, then you move out in peace, not because of you running away from black tax and you think it's better I go stay 35 kilometers away from them so that it's not an easy trip for them to come to my house, you know. But what then happens when the family is not so favorable in terms of resources and also a structure that I've spoken about earlier on? So it differs from one situation to another.
So pivoting on the issue of governance or maybe systems, what can you say currently now that we are way ahead or out of that apartheid era, but we seem like we're not really out of it, because it seems as if the black people, the black population, just can't seem to like break through a certain margin to actually get to that place where we can start talking about what kind of an inheritance am I leaving my children? What is your thinking around that what kind of systems can we put in place, or what is it can we do as a people? Because the situation is not in favor of anybody currently right now, and the burden or the hardships of black tax are not getting any easier.
You know, it's quite an exciting question, because it's also one of those questions that are like the answer is diluted into a whole lot of challenges. Like, you see, the apartheid system was dodgy because, and it was evil because, it's a system that even when we thought apartheid is over, you still witness apartheid. I mean, one of the components or categories of apartheid is racism. You know, we all know how white people are so racist and they can't even hide it. And it has even gone to the current young generation. I mean, we all know of the recent racism scandal that happened in Stellenbosch a few days ago. Those are real scenarios. You've struggled to get your child to a tertiary institution, and you've parted ways with your hard-earned money. Sometimes you had to go to the loan sharks, abomashonisa, just to get extra cash, because you're thinking, can I just sort this boy with a laptop so that he doesn't come back and say, but dad, how did you expect me to pass in my studies when I didn't even have the right tools to do so? And then you part ways with your hard-earned cash, and then there comes a racist white boy, and he starts urinating on your essentials like your laptop and your study material, you know, all in the name of hatred. It's like people hate you for no good reason, and you've got to deal with that, and you still have to deal with your day-to-day struggles that we are faced with as a black nation, all in the name of an apartheid system that has not died death. Apartheid is very much alive because of the systems that are put in place. If I say I want to buy a Jeep Wrangler which is worth 750,000, and it's not even a brand new one, quick to approve me. But if I approach the very bank before I even buy the Jeep Wrangler and I say I would like to buy a 750 property, they will make it impossible for me to buy that property. And you can see clearly that these are ongoing apartheid repercussions. You know, so we are. It's almost like we are fetching water with buckets full of holes. So until, as black people, as Africans, until we have this kind of of conversations. That's why I agreed to have the conversation, because I really feel like every forum that is strong today, including political parties, it started somewhere. And I'm certain it started with a small group of people and it grew from there. So these kind of conversations where you are part of Africa to the World podcast, these are the platforms that we need as part of solutions, thanks to technology, because in the middle of all challenges we are faced with as Africans, but at least there's technology that allows us to have conversations even if we are miles away from each other, because it is through these conversations that we can help those that are still fast asleep to say, guys, you need to wake up. You are needed on board. If an African family is to leave a good inheritance for the young generation, we've got to work together, because parents only, they, some of them end up going on pension. And you can see, I mean, where I work, I see old people still begging for freelance contracts just because they've got 30 years experience in the industry, and they still want to continue working because of just how tough it is. Now, if an over 60-year-old still wants to work as a freelancer, then it means already we are not solving the problem, because in that position we could bring in a young lion who could come on board and work, who has just completed their studies, so that they also have an opportunity to work, so that we've got young people active in the economy. Now, instead of that, we've got this experienced gentleman, and the company can't do away with him unless it comes to a point where he ends up parting ways with this life, with this planet, and only then that he will be replaced. But you can also see in the replacement attitude that it's almost like they're looking for someone with a similar experience. Now you've got an elderly going on pension and they still want to work. Already, that's a problem. And then you've got a young person who has just started employment. He's hit hard by black tax. He's got siblings, he's got parents who are not coping, and they're expecting that he will make the situation better for them. In South Africa, even though the elderly, I mean, the senior citizens are getting a grant, but still that grant is next to nothing. It still doesn't cover 50% of the essentials to run a basic home without even living large, without even having to eat meat 5 times a week. So the problems are deeper, 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 deeper. So we need to have these kind of conversations so that we can work towards addressing these problems, so that we can deal with these problems on a much better level. Because if no one does anything about the situation, I'm telling you, it's going to be a generational curse. Even our grandchildren will have these issues because of no one had the opportunity, or no one had the guts to deal with them.
Can I jump in? Okay, so can I play a devil's advocate for a little bit here? So we're talking about the systems that are in place and different issues with the institutions that exist within society that are making it very difficult for Black people, especially, to build wealth, to build generational wealth. Can we also not say, to some extent, in some cases, maybe it's the problem with the young people of today? So you spoke about the issue of loans as well, and how parents, in some instances, go out of their way. They get loans from loan sharks or whatever source it is because they're trying to move their children forward. And then we then also have children who go into the same process of going into debt because they're trying to pay back, in quotes, their parents for all the sacrifices. So, as young people, in some cases, I feel like maybe we fail to set boundaries in as much as what we can do and what we can't do. Because for me, it doesn't make sense to be in a situation where, yes, I'm working, I'm making money, but now I'm going an extra mile of getting loans and going into debt because of the things that my family is expecting me to do, instead of just saying, guys, listen, you may not necessarily understand, but this is my situation. This is as far as I can go, and that's it. So, is it also not the fault of young people sometimes where we fail to build generational wealth?
Shami, so it's a chain, and I'll tell you why I say it's a chain. You know, when we are brought up in an environment of ubuntu, like Yvonne was saying earlier on, and the environment of ubuntu is deeply rooted into our DNA. And personally, I feel like ubuntu is a good way of life. However, when you are too kind, obviously people will take full advantage of your situation. So, but also as a caring child, and you know that your parents are going through one, two, three challenges, and you also try and empathize by putting yourself in their situation to say, I'm earning better than my mom and dad during their working days. I'm earning better than both their salaries put together. Now that's where the trap comes into picture now, where you look at this forum house and you feel like, before the creator calls them to the spiritual world, let me try and make them happy, because at this age they just want to be happy. And that's when now ubuntu kicks in and the trap kicks in, and then you start with either one loan or the credit card, and then it now becomes difficult to pay all these debts, because remember, black tax does not move away just because you've extended your forum house with extra two-bedroom and a spacious lounge. Now it also comes across like, no, actually, it's a mental thing. So in their minds now they start thinking, no, actually Shamiso can manage this just fine, because remember, you've also bought yourself a picanto that you're gonna be moving around in, and they thinking, oh, she can afford a car, she can afford petrol, she can afford insurance, she even extended our house. Now naturally, some of these demands that falls under the bracket of black tax, they start being too much. And then what then becomes the solution? Then the solution becomes Shamiso saying, it's best to move out, because at least when I've moved out, it's different from when I see the situation right next to me on a daily basis, and I can see that it's not that these people are being unreasonable. Yes, there are moments where you feel like they are being too much. It's almost like they brought me up so I can bring them up, that kind of a situation. So hence I'm saying it's not like you can't single out the problem and say it's this one's problem. It's a problem with different categories. It's like the agenda of the meeting. When you are done with point one, you must still address point two until the end of the agenda. So it's a scenario like that, whereby there's challenges from this area, challenges from that area. So all these challenges, they then form a complete humongous problem that takes serious time to deal with, and sometimes we even part ways with this life without even getting to solve these problems. But we need to start thinking differently and say, instead of prioritizing to buy a car first, I'd rather have a situation where if I am to rent, rather I rent a back room close to work, and then I save and buy a house, so that at least when you have a house, then you can be creative about it. I mean, other people have got skills to work with their hands. You can convert the garage in your house into a workshop and start creating more wealth, and even teach your sons and daughters your skill. And when they grow up with that skill, even if the government fails them dismally in terms of creating employment, but also you've played a role, and we've all played a role in creating this employment. And prioritize African people when there are opportunities, because African people are the most hurt, are the most traumatized, because of historically what we've been through and what we continue to go through.
So basically, Nato, you're saying that despite the systematic roots of the issues that we face, which are related to black tax, there is a way of finding a balance, and there is a way of young people building generational wealth and leaving an inheritance for their children.
Yes, so that's correct. You are also right when you say aren't young people to be blamed as well. But you see, life is about, that's why they say experience is the best teacher. When you have experienced something, you are different from someone. Like you can't take me to a place you've never been to, you know. So in ngesizulu they say indlela ibuzwa kwabaphambili, you know. So what then happens is that uh, as a young person, if we can change the narrative, you know, we should be able to achieve. I mean, for an example, there's people who play football, as an example, and football play pays a lot better than people who are dressed up in expensive suits, you know. But we also come back and zoom into what then becomes the lifestyle of the footballers, you know. I mean, I know a lot of footballers, and I've tried to advise some, and they showed me the middle finger without saying it, you know, where you say to someone, look, you now have a lucrative contract at Orlando Pirates. Instead of moving from this point to a posh area and you're still going to rent, stay here a little bit and save so that you can buy property. No, the player doesn't do that because he feels like Neto never played professional, even if he played football. He's just a sports presenter or he's just a sports broadcaster. I'm not going to listen to him. 5 years down the line, you read a story about him. He's got nothing left. He went through an injury threatening career and now he can't play for Orlando Pirates anymore. But this is the person you tried to advise, and they thought maybe you are after their money. I don't tell you anything about your salary. Why tell me about my football money? That's the kind of attitude, you know. I mean, I even spoke to former footballers before. One of them is the late Isaac Kungwane, who used to play for Kaiser Chiefs, well known as Shakes Kungwane. And I said to him, Shakes, you used to play for Chiefs. Surely it should be easy for you to speak to these footballers and say to and advise them accordingly. And he says to me, Neto, I tried. I spoke to one player and he said to me, Grootman, when you were playing for Chiefs, how much were you earning? I said 11,000. That's Sheikh Skumane talking. And this the Chiefs player says, well, I earn 88,000. So you can't tell me anything about how to spend my money because you don't know the taste of the money I'm making as a player versus what you used to make. Can you see that it's another potential going down the drain because of attitude, you know? So young people need to change their attitude and allow themselves to learn, because hence I was talking about experience is the best teacher, because when you are not so informed, it's very easy to take all the wrong decisions, and you at that time you'll be thinking they are right decisions because why? They favor you. You know, if you find joy out of going to the nightclub and you spend 15,000 just because you earn 88,000, or you spend 20,000 in one evening and you don't see anything wrong there, can you see that it's still a long way to get you to understand that you've got to show money some respect so that it can respect you back?
Wow, that is something else that you just said there, Neto. It's up to us to take the initiative, the responsibility of taking charge of getting ahead of this black tax and finding a way of creating our own generational wealth as we progress. But I just want to take you back a little bit. You mentioned previously that we are experiencing elderly people who have reached the years of retirement who are seemingly not interested in retiring because they still want to continue with their career. Could we say that these people have come to the realization that maybe they haven't created enough generational wealth for their children? Or could it be that black tax has no demarcation? It's not necessarily about it being about the young millennials and the young people, but we also experience that even our elderlies, our fathers, our grandmothers, and our mothers are actually still taking care of their families. So could that be the inspiration, that the reason why they're simply not willing to let go of their 9 to 5 and going to retirement, because the benefits or the money or the salary range is not the same as what I get in retirement, and the responsibilities that are surrounding me are not getting less, and I haven't created anything for my children? Could we say that is the inspiration behind that, or could we say that's maybe the thing that is influencing that decision?
Yeah, it's a broader spectrum kind of a situation, and I'll give you a couple of examples. You find a scenario whereby this person is holding on to their 9 to 5 until pension age because of the payout will be a lot better than their monthly salaries that they were getting. And obviously, because of there's a lot on the table in terms of financial responsibilities, it's school fees, it's electricity, it's water, it's groceries, it's clothing. There's just so much. Plus, black people and funeral covers and so many other covers, stock fails in the process. Sometimes that money comes through, but you still don't see much that you've done with it because of just how much of debts you've got at your disposal on month to month basis. So already it becomes a way of life. And just as you think that life will improve, it still doesn't. There's just an ongoing list of responsibilities. So I think what we need to do as an inspiration as the African community is that we need to come into terms with the fact that what's not yours will never be satisfying. And I'm saying
Yeah.
this because if I give you 20K from 15K, you will next season or next fiscal then try and push it further to see if it can be 25. Because also lifestyle, people who are earning 20K, they most probably live the lifestyle of 25K. If they live the lifestyle of 20K, it's excluding black tax. So already there's no running away from debt. But if we are to come together as a united family and say there's 3 siblings and 2 parents, and then what skills do we have that we can put on the table and see how best we can create wealth? Surely your father was into woodwork as an example, and then we say, okay, fine, I'm willing to learn this skill, and we can do extra cash on carpentry, we can do coffee tables, we can do a whole lot of things, that the skill permits us to do. But we don't think like that. You've got a room outside that you've decided to convert into a storeroom. But if you were to think out of the box, you could convert that room into an office, you could convert that room into a workshop and start doing something based on extra talents and skills that we have, so that you don't feel like you are trapped into this salary lifestyle. That's why I say what's not yours will never be satisfying. But if you create something on the side and then you put it together with the salary that you get on month to month basis, if there are 3 salaries on the table, let's just say the parents are on their pension age, but the 3 siblings are all employed. If we start saying, let's save towards this project, and then this is the project that we will utilize to bring us extra cash, and we all inject efforts and we all inject financial contribution into this project, and we give ourselves a year or two depending on what the project is, I think we will see better results than going through what our parents and their parents went through, which is a situation that then leads to child labor, where a child ends up dropping out because of the situation back home. And it doesn't make sense to go to school with an empty stomach and you are not even focused at school because of you thinking of all these challenges that you are going through.
Yes, I understand that. So just to wind down on the topic, Neto, if you are looking at it that, when we look at this understanding of, let us look at this situation differently. Yes, we've been on a system that didn't give us access. We were on a system that didn't allow us to actually, have a voice or a say as African people. But we have the power to change the narrative now. We can change the way we think about money, how we deal with money. Like you rightfully said, what's not yours is not yours. You cannot keep it. Let's start thinking differently. It's now our time as millennials to take the initiative, the responsibility to start looking for other income generating projects, to start creating that generational wealth, because it is still going to be expected from you to take care of your family. It's a responsibility. I believe it's a great responsibility of ubuntu for us to, watch over each other like that as Africans. But at the same time, we also need to be cognizant that the decision does not lie in the system. For so long, we've been waiting and relying for systems to work in our favor, but that's not working and it's not going to happen anytime soon. So it's up to us to become the change that we want to see by starting to take that initiative and taking leadership and being in front of this situation and determining where we're going in terms of creating generational wealth. So and for us to just get into the point of closing this topic today about black tax, Neto, what would you say? What would you say, or how would you encourage a millennial parent right now in terms of how they see black tax and how it can be best understood, like the goods and I would say the pros and the cons of black tax? What would you say would be your advice right now to any millennial parent or to any elderly person who's in this cycle of constantly trying to get ahead but failing to because of debt and other things that have come due to black tax? But how can we relook and rethink black tax as being actually a good thing that benefits us as a nation, as an African continent, and as a people?
I think in English, they say there's nothing wrong with copying as long as you copy a good thing. If you go to Indian communities, you will notice something flamboyant about where they stay. Most of them stay in double-story houses, and it's huge houses. And then you think, but where do these people find the money? So what they do is, uh, they all stay in one family. So it could be you as my sister and Shamiso as our sister, and you guys are married. I'm also married, and our parents are also there, and we are all staying there. And let's just say, for argument's sake, there's six of us working. So what they do is, then they save money. So they will then say, let's just say we all can afford to put 5,000 on the table. This 5,000 is going to look after all the essentials. It's going to buy groceries. It's going to pay water and electricity. It's going to pay the bond. And obviously, because we are all clubbing money towards this, I mean, that's 30K already. So you can even afford to push the bond more so that you can quickly finish paying this house. And then comes a time later on in life, they invest in another property that they can now rent out, but they continue to live together. When it's time for dinner, they celebrate together. And life is cheaper that way, because even if you were to rent an apartment and it's a 2-bedroom apartment and it's two couples staying in that apartment, it's cheaper than if you say, I want my space. I don't want to mix with people. And then you take this apartment alone. And then things don't go your way at work, and you lose your job. Now it's back to square one. So even if you had great plans on the table, you don't have the financial muscle to make a difference in order to ensure that, there's good inheritance coming your family's way, even when you are no longer there. So I think if we can copy from what Indians and perhaps other cultures are doing to eradicate poverty, I think it will do us good, because unity is power. So if we've united, we can achieve a lot more than if you go your direction, Shamiso goes her direction, and we're all trying to figure this life thing out, and everyone wants to prosper more than the other. If I buy a car that is more expensive than yours, then it becomes an issue, or it becomes an issue at work because it's nicer than my boss's car, and he starts thinking, where does he get the money from? So we deal with challenges on a day-to-day basis. But I think if we tackle this thing as families, even if it's a small family, once you do something, what we can achieve together, or what we can achieve as a small group, is a lot better than what I can achieve as an individual. So I think if we can create that culture of uniting our families, those that are employed in families, let's club money together and identify a project of making this life a lot easier than when dealing with life on your own. I think we'll achieve a lot better.
I really love this contribution that you've just given us, Neto, of the Indian example and how they managed to, in that instance, create wealth and just empower each other throughout the entire family. But I think within the African context, we would have a lot of work to do to start um, having such a similar initiative. For me, I feel like in a lot of instances, there is a lot of self centeredness, there is a lot of selfishness. People think about themselves and how they are going to progress. So now, if you're in this family and you start having discussions as a family to say, okay, listen, everyone who's working, we're going to pool money. This is what we're going to do, and we're going to help this person first. It becomes who's going first. How are we going to determine who goes first? And everyone else is thinking, then I'm struggling, in quotes, I'm struggling whilst this other person is now starting to get ahead. So I think we also need to really start at the heart and the way in which people view family, the way in which people view helping each other, the way in which people view even Ubuntu. We love throwing around that word. We love talking about it. We love saying, Africans are a people of Ubuntu. We have unity. We love each other. But when it actually comes down to doing it and living it out, that then becomes a whole different problem. And you were also talking about how some of the pensioners are opting to work longer than they need to. Not necessarily because they need the money, but because they're thinking, I'm going to have a bigger payout. That, in one way or another, is self-centeredness because you're trying to push your own agenda. So for me, it also comes down to dealing with some of those things so that we can begin to move forward as a people.
Yeah, good knowledge. Shami, so what you're raising is very, very critical. The thing is, there is no effort without an error. Unfortunately, we are bound to deal with people who are self-centered, people who are selfish. I mean, personally, I feel like if African governments were united as the principles of governance on the continent, I mean, half of these situations we are dealing with wouldn't be there because remember, the very same presidents, they come from African families. And it's not like when we talk about poverty, hunger, unemployment, and various other struggles that Africans go through. It's not like we are talking a foreign language. We're talking about issues that they know of because they've tasted apartheid, they've tasted poverty, they've tasted struggle. But people forget easily when the rainbow comes out. For some reason, they forget there was a storm and there's a possibility of this storm coming back right away. And that's why you would find like the Minister of Sports and Culture talking about a flag, a monumental flag that is going to cost 22 million, and he refers to it as a symbol of unity. What unity when we still have deep racism happening? What unity when people are still driving on roads that are full of potholes? You run from the pothole on the left, it hits you on the right. There's load shedding issues, there's crime, there's gender-based violence issues, and the justice system can't even deal with it. Now, let's use gender-based violence as an example. This is a situation where really you don't need financial resources to deal with this situation. Just by going to report a GBV case at any police station, the attitude that you are going to get there from the officers that are supposed to service you with dignity, that are supposed to service you with respect. You hit a hard rock from there, you go to a public hospital, bad service right there from the security guard before you even make it to reception. So in situations where it's not even about wealth, but just Ubuntu, we don't see the acts of Ubuntu in action. People use Ubuntu when it suits them best, but when it's time to act it out, then it's a big challenge. Hence, during one of my responses, I mentioned that it is thanks to platforms like Africa to the World podcast, so that we have these conversations and people can listen to these conversations and people can reflect to these conversations, because there's still a long way to go. So it requires more numbers to get into this kind of situations, and we must just have these uncomfortable conversations. Same as black tax. There's no harm in having an honest conversation with the parents and saying, good people, I love you to hell, to heaven and back, but I can only afford so much per month to assist with, so that you are also able to plan your finances properly and not go into the same trap of going through the whole of debts like your parents and their parents, and then it becomes an ongoing thing. But also the educational system is dodgy, because if the educational system was fair from an early age, when they realize that Neto is not coping, but he looks like he's talented when it comes to 1, 2, 3, then start channeling the child according to channels that are going to benefit him moving forward, so that he can have a unique career path, so that you don't lie to him expecting him to be a lawyer when he can't even go through 10 pages of whatever simple book, So there's a lot that needs to be addressed. So we've got to take a sober-minded decision and just know that we are Africans on duty, we are soldiers of the continent, and have these conversations until we can make a difference.
Wow, that is powerful and amazing, Neto. Thank you so much for your contributions on Black Tax. I think you totally unpacked it, and you literally showed us that Black Tax is not just like it's my family type of thing. It's a nation type of thing. It's a content type of thing. And it's not just Black Tax. There's so many elements, so many systems, so many political things that affect Black Tax, systems that we subconsciously are not conscious of, that affect us into the whole contribution of Black Tax, of actually giving or willingly giving back to the people who took care of us, and how we can think differently about it, how we then can bring back Ubuntu, because it seems as if we've totally forgotten what Ubuntu is and what it is that is expected of us as an African people. And we are affected by systems. Yes, systems are not working in our favor, but we have the power and the authority to create a system that works in our favor by thinking of other methods and ways of creating generational wealth, and looking at Black Tax in a different light. How can we look at Black Tax in a positive way that then benefits us as an African people, as a home and as a nation, and what we are trying to achieve as a collective? Thank you so much, Neto, for joining us on this conversation. We are so grateful to have you, and we have been, educated by your insights. There are so many things that we have been overlooking, and I definitely loved how you connected your work to the issues of Black Tax, because this now becomes a total big reality, because sometimes we feel like we are far from it, but we're very, very close to it, and we just don't realize that it's just the neighbor next door. So thank you, our listeners, for tuning in and listening to our conversation about Black Tax. So we still want to hear more from you. We still want to hear your stories about Black Tax. Tell us your experiences about Black Tax. Tell us your understanding about Black Tax and the systems and that are involved in this whole process of Black Tax, and how it's affecting you as a family, and what you would think you would want to do as a collective going forward. So I am Yvonne.
And I'm Shami.
And thank you for joining us on our conversation on Black Tax. Thank you for Neto for jumping onto this conversation with us, Neto. We are so grateful, and we will see you on the next go around as we continue telling African stories to change people's lives and bring unity and transform us for the better. Have a great day.